Hi friends, welcome back. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a chatty one. It's either going to be super long, and if it is, I will add some timestamps and maybe chapters if I can figure out how to do that on YouTube so that you can skip around and get to the part that you're most interested in. As we head to the end of the year and start to look towards 2024, I've been spending a lot of time, maybe too much time, reflecting on where I started in 2023 in terms of my planning system and process, where I evolved it to when my needs changed, and some thoughts on where I'm planning on going in 2024. In case you can hear that in the background, that is my dog settling down and making himself comfortable. So feel free to take a cue from Coconut and grab yourself a tea, which I have right here, and settle in and let's talk about planners because I could seriously talk about this all day long. Okay. I'm just going to preface this now by saying this is not necessarily all of the notebooks that I have been using in 2023. This video is really going to be focused on planning, so productivity and planning. I have a lot of other notebooks that I use for like what people call memory keeping or emotion processing, that kind of thing. So I have like a Dear Diary that I've pretty much kept since I was 10. And I've also included more intentional memory keeping on like just beyond thought processing. And that's really because I was starting to feel like I had a need to spend more time intentionally noting down the small things as part of my self-care practice. And so I can go into that in a future video, but for today, we're really just going to be focused on planning. Just moving this out of the way. So we're going to start with this stack. So at the beginning of 2023, I was using my Traveler's Notebook. This was my 2023 weekly that I started out with, and a paper calendar that I was using for meal planning. As I talked about in one of my previous videos, meal planning is something that I really did not enjoy, but knew was necessary in order for us to save money and minimize the amount of overthinking and decision fatigue that we were facing in all the years prior to that. I decided that 2023 was going to be the year that I really put an honest effort into meal planning, and I'm really proud when I look back to say that we have pretty much completed an entire year of planning our meals proactively, which for someone like me who struggles a lot with doing things like this on a consistent basis, I was really proud of myself. So yeah, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is a traveler's notebook. And this system was something that I kind of iterated on over the years. So I started out in the bullet journal world where I was kind of prioritizing like making it more artsy and doing lots of drawings and setting up my monthlies and things like that. I realized at the time that there was so much going on at my job that I had to really let go of anything that wasn't pretty much like a to-do list. So what I ended up working with was I would have a monthly insert. In 2022, I was primarily using it for remembering like special occasions and trying to use it for my personal life. So if I had any like personal events that I needed to take note of, the intention was to use the monthly. And then I always had a second insert, which was my weekly. And so I can't really show I don't really show the contents of my planners because I need them to work for me. And in order for them to work for me, I can't censor things and I can't really, I put things like amount spent and credit card bills and just general life stuff that is not appropriate to share online, even though flip throughs are so much fun. But anyway, so I would have a weekly insert where honestly, it was pretty much like a glorified to-do list because I learned that the act of writing something down was going to set me up for success to actually complete them. So even though I have tried digital to-do lists and I have tried Notion and I have tried, I've just tried a lot of different things digitally because my job was quite digital, if that makes sense. And so I tried really hard to use digital tools, but my brain just remembers things better when I'm writing them down. Another reason why I found this format great was because this is nice and compact. It fits in my bag really easily. And sometimes my to-do lists, as you can see here, sometimes my to-do lists would take up an entire page. So this was just one day at the end of last year. And I just had so many tasks. This is book meetings with, and there's probably like 8 or 9 names that I needed to book meetings with. And so I just had so many things going on that I would essentially categorize them by like work, life, and school. I think at this point I wasn't taking a course, I was taking a break, so that didn't factor in. But typically this was primarily to keep track of all the tasks that I needed to do for school and making sure that they were happening alongside all the tasks that I needed to do for work. So this was and still is probably one of the most important aspects of my planning system. It's something that I find that whenever I don't do this, I start not finishing things. I forget to do tasks. And this is something that I have continued consistently all the way throughout 2023. So you can see I moved into a new insert here. And this one is a traveler's notebook insert. So it's the Midori paper, which I like. It's a little bit thicker. And then this one is a Galen leather insert, and I got it because I fell in love with the Tomoe River paper. I hope I said that right. I learned very quickly that I do not enjoy blank notebooks, and so I've been using a pencil board to help me with lines. And I'm going to use these inserts up because I already bought them and I don't want to waste them. But as soon as these are done, and that might be a few years from now, depending on how quickly I get through these notebooks, I will probably go back to either a traveler's notebook insert or something that has like grids or a dot grid at the very least. Pretty much use this exactly the same way. Around Q2 of this year, I resigned from my full-time role and went back into freelancing because I felt that that would be a little bit easier to manage with school. And so what that meant was I no longer had like a central Google Calendar that kept me going for the majority of the working day. Instead, I'm now using this book to house different freelance projects that I'm working on, so they could be coming from all these different places. I'm also managing school tasks because there are so many little things that I need to remember with the courses I'm taking. And it also has life tasks in here. So things like bills and payments and dentist appointments and doctor's appointments and anything that I need to remember, any tasks that we need to do around the home, anything like that. The only thing that doesn't really go in here is meal planning because I was doing it on a calendar. So this is honestly really just a glorified to-do list. find that for different areas of my life, I do like to compartmentalize. Like for work, for example, I always have like a work notebook where I jot down meeting notes or thoughts about projects that I'm working on. It helps me process and reflect on things. So I always have separate notebooks for separate areas of my life, but then I have this comprehensive overview of everything that I need to do. And so every morning or the night before, I will review my digital calendars. I'll take a look at the week ahead and I will write down all of the immediate tasks that I need to do for that following day. And then I'll just systematically check them off. And if I don't do them, I just repeat them until they get done. So this system works extremely well for me for productivity. But the main thing that was missing was I was getting things done, which was wonderful, but I was losing a sense of time, if that makes sense, because it's basically just a perpetual to-do list. So it's like day, things to do, turn the page, day, things to do. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's exactly what I needed to get things done. But for the past few years, I've been getting to December and I have just been feeling like I have no sense of time. So little things like losing track of when I last caught up with a friend or what exactly happened in June of that year. I just really had no memory of it. And so I felt like I needed a little more structure in terms of just being able to start categorizing different events and being able to see them within the context of the entire year. And so that is what eventually led me to expanding my system a little bit and integrating Hobonichi into the mix. So there were a few things that led me to Hobonichi. I'm sure if you're as into planners as I am, you probably are aware of all of these things. But the main thing was, as I was rethinking my planning system, I decided to give the Cousin a try. What really drew me to the Cousin was the fact that it was kind of notebook size. So the daily pages I knew I'd be able to use as like note pages because I was trying to take notes in my inserts. So in addition to to-do lists, I was also adding in random thoughts and little notes. But they were getting lost in here. And then I would look at my to-do list and it would sometimes it would feel overwhelming because I would have mixed, it would just be a wall of text, even if the amount of to-do items that I needed to do was not necessarily the whole page. So I really enjoyed the fact that the Cousin would give me some space to process those random thoughts that come in my mind throughout the day. I also really liked the yearly. That would help me be able to find my notes a little more easily. So these are not indexed in any way. And if I ever needed to find information, I didn't really have a good way of searching through it. So it would really just be me flipping through pages repeatedly to find something. And I realized that I could really do with some type of index. And then the most important thing for me was the ability to start to attach events to dates and just help me remember things a little more clearly. I forgot to mention as well that in 2022, I found that I was barely using my monthly insert because I was relying mostly on my Google Calendar for events. And so events would get added to my Google Calendar, and then I wasn't always adding it to my paper calendar. So it was kind of pointless. And in an effort to make use of the insert that I had already purchased, I was using my monthly as a place to add a highlight, and that actually transitioned over into my 5-year, which I'll talk about in a different video. practicing gratitude every day was working out really well for me, for my mental health. And so I decided to treat myself to a 5 year because I love the idea of having a regular practice of gratitude and also being able to see how that evolves over time and over the span of 5 years. So that is what I was doing with the monthly. And in 2024, I've just decided to not get a monthly for my traveler's notebook at all because I never quite was able to use it effectively. Moving on to the cousin, I'm still not really using the monthly that effectively in here. And that's just because I think in terms of how events get added to my schedule, it's really digital because a lot of events involve other people. And so when you're involving other people, things move and change and shift because now you're taking into account someone else's schedule. And so instead of writing things in here and scribbling them out and moving them around, I'm primarily using the monthly for retroactively adding in some highlights. I do want to keep the contents private, but if you can imagine, the monthlies are essentially just memories of that month. And I typically do fill that out at the end of the month as part of a reflection on how the month went. So that's one way that I have integrated remembering what's going on. And then my weekly is something that I'm using to improve my awareness of how much I can actually get done during the week. I have a tendency to want to do a lot of things and sometimes not be fully aware of how long those things take. And so for me, in order to prevent me from overcommitting or getting overwhelmed with taking on too many things in one day, I usually sit down at the end of the week and I look ahead on my calendar and I'm able to sort of map out my entire week. And I've realized that I really like to do my planning on a weekly basis as opposed to like a monthly basis or a daily. So daily, I use my traveler's notebook insert to help me understand what I need to achieve for that day. And I use my cousin to give me an overview of my week and allows me to plan ahead and see what's coming up this week and what I might need to shift around. So that's how I use my weeks. Next year, I'm also going to be using a cousin, but as my life continues to evolve and my needs change, I may eventually look into sizing down. That's my cousin. So I use the monthly mainly as a memory keeper reflection that I do at the end of the month. I use my weekly proactively to give me a weekly overview as I head into the week. And then the dailies I primarily use as time relevant notes, if that makes sense. So this is kind of a place where I kick off a lot of things. So let's say I'm starting a new project with a client. In order to get a sense of the scope of the project, I might use something like this to jot down the notes. And if it ends up turning into something that I feel will need a lot more processing or I'll need a lot more space, that might move into something digital. If I need to say like password protect the information, or if I need to work within my client's internal systems just for to keep the data safe. Similarly with school, let's say I went to a live class and my professor gave us more context on a paper that we need to write. This is where I would write down notes on, specifics about the assignment because it is something that I'm probably not going to need to reference outside of this year. If the information is something that probably isn't going to be that relevant once I move on from this year, that's what I'm using the daily pages for. So it's not quite enough for, say, taking notes when I'm studying, but it's enough space for me to kind of take these quick notes because for me, I just process things better when I'm writing notes by hand. In my previous job, I had a lot of one-on-one meetings, and I would often take a lot of those notes digitally because I type faster than I write. And I also wanted all of those notes that are confidential to live within the ecosystem of the company that I worked in. So in that case, that all should live in whatever system you're using to keep that information safe. But if it's information that only impacts me, and if it is specific to this year, that's what I'm using this for. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. I don't know if I'm communicating that very well, but essentially it's all information that lives and most likely stays within 2023 is in my 2023 cousin. So this is a very wonderful book. And the reason why I don't eliminate this TN and just have it all in here is simply because I still find it useful to have a standalone book that kind of encompasses all areas of my life. And it's almost like compartmentalizing, determining what needs to happen and what needs to get done in the day. I'm sure I could use the daily pages to accomplish that, but for some reason, this system really works for me, and I'll have to do a little more reflection on why it works so well, but I think it has to do with the fact that whenever I'm doing certain tasks, I really need to stay focused on it. And when I am sitting down to decide what I need to do, that just lives here. When I'm deciding when I'm doing my meal planning, that just lives in here. And so I'm not opening this up and seeing notes about an assignment I have coming up, or a report that I need to write for work, or tasks that I need to do around the home. I'm just doing meal planning. And I think the fact that I can focus on one task that is quite annoying and I do not enjoy, and therefore am prone to procrastinating and doing other things this is just a really good way for me to focus. So the focus here is just figuring out what needs to get done. And then this is more of like a repository of information that will help me get my tasks done. This book, I've done a whole video on this book in terms of planning, but I'll just say really quickly that after several months, I think almost 6 months of planning on these calendar printouts, I decided that I wanted to consolidate all of that into this book. And so I was planning my meals, and then I was using Post-it notes to write down grocery lists, and it was just getting really messy. And I didn't really have a good system of allowing myself to reflect on what was working well, what wasn't working well, and also how much we were spending on groceries. Because if I'm putting this much effort into meal planning, I would really like to know if it's making an impact on our budget and our overall spend on food, because meal planning and cooking regularly is a lot of work. So the focus for this book is really just anything to do with meal planning. I really enjoy being able to kind of track how much we're spending on groceries and what we're spending on. And I'm also using this to jot down recipes that I'm using. I do have some thoughts on how I might streamline some of the things that I have done in my meal planning journal for 2024. And I'll probably do a separate video for that, because this video is already getting pretty long. Okay, so this is how I started out 2023, with a paper printout calendar for meals and a weekly insert for my daily to-do lists, and a monthly that was primarily for gratitude and tracking our media consumption, so movies and TV shows that we're watching. And this is what 2024 is going to look like. This is primarily just planning. So very, very loosely, my plan for next year is to use a cousin again for school. So I am, if all goes well, I'll be completing my program in August, September of next year. So I know a cousin is going to work well for having those daily pages as notes, because I'll be doing a lot of things that will require me taking notes that will probably be specific to 2024. So I'm going to use a cousin. It's going to be primarily for school and work. So this is going to be very much like a productivity book. I'm experimenting with an A6. This is not going to be for planning. This is mainly going to be for memory keeping and helping me out with remembering things that happen in 2024, so that I don't finish the year off saying to myself, what exactly happened this year? Time went by so quickly. I have no idea what happened. I was doing a mix of that in my cousin. So if I went on vacation, I would sometimes use my daily pages to write down my thoughts or recaps of my vacation. And I just want to keep those things separate. So I'm going to be using the A6 primarily for that. Originally, I was thinking about using this as part of my practicum, because the program that I am in will involve me seeing clients and taking notes. But I actually don't think I'm going to do that, because from a confidentiality perspective, that does not seem like a good idea. And so I'm going to pause on whether I use a physical notebook or not. So this is actually not really for planning. I'm mainly going to use this more so for mental health and memory keeping, I guess is the term. So I just wanted to put this out here because in my unboxing video, I was very excited about this A6, and I still am, but I don't think I'm going to be using this for the original purpose that I had intended, simply because from a confidentiality perspective, I'm not sure that it's a good idea to use a notebook like this. And then I have these weeks. I will set up another video later to go through what I'm thinking, but my plan for now is to use one of these for meal planning, because that has worked really well from a focus perspective. And then one of them is going to be home planner. So now that I know that keeping a book like this helps me stay productive and plan to do tasks that I don't enjoy doing, I want to apply that thinking towards overall home tasks. So one book is going to be for meal planning, and then one book is going to be for home stuff. So any kind of larger tasks like our cleaning schedule and getting ready for our garden and all the different things that we want to do in the spring to get ready for the summer. And all those tasks that it feels like we're doing reactively, I would really like to be more proactive with our house stuff. And then the last one is going to be like a health and wellness. So I don't know if this really falls in the planning category, but I do think that in order for me to be successful in the role that I'm going to be starting next year, self-care is not only important, but some would argue is an ethical obligation. This is me committing to prioritizing self-care and my overall mental and physical and emotional well-being. So this is going to be something that I don't particularly enjoy either. Like I think self-care is one of those things where we kind of know by now that it's important, but it's always the first thing to go. When things get busy, when there's a lot of tasks to do, dedicating a book towards tracking it, I'm hoping that it'll help me ensure that I actually do the things I need to do to stay healthy. So I know that having so many different books is not for everyone, but when it came to deciding how I wanted to enter into 2024, it took a lot of self-reflection and understanding what my needs were, what my wants were, and trying to find a happy medium between the two. So I actually put on blinders and I did not entertain the idea of pre-ordering or really buying anything else outside of the Hobonichi products, because I really enjoyed using them this year, and I love the fact that there is this structure that eliminates the amount of setup that is required, so it's just easy to open up the book and get started. I love the TN because just having this blank notebook is unstructured, and it just allows me to kind of start off my day with this routine of reflecting on what needs to get done. I'm very excited moving into next year. I'm open to the fact that as my life changes, my needs will change. Like if I found myself in a role again where the majority of my tasks needed to live online within the ecosystem of the organization I was working with, I probably wouldn't need something like a cousin, because what I did before when I worked in a full-time role was I used my digital calendar, and then I had like a physical blank notebook where I would just bring to meetings and I would just jot things down as needed if I needed. That worked out really well for several years, but now that I have so many different things going on, this is the system that is working for me right now. So I guess this is kind of my unofficial lineup for next year. It's going to be a TN for my to-do list. It's going to be using my Hobonichi weeks for specific things that need to get done in my home, meal planning, and overall mental health and wellness. This is going to be sort of the fun book where I extract all the life events, create almost like a magazine of my 2024 highlights. This will be my productive note-taking book that I'll be using for school and work. And then obviously I have like my journal and my 5-year. So it's not necessarily my entire system of all the notebooks that I am currently in, because that would be probably a very overwhelming video to record. So that's everything. That's all for me for today. If you're still here, thank you so much for being here. I would love to hear how your 2023 has gone. Where did you start? Where did you end? And what are your thoughts and plans for 2024? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will do my best to respond to you as soon as possible. Lots of fun holiday and planner things to come between now and December. So if you've enjoyed this content, I hope you'll stick around, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!